Hello everyone and welcome to Homestead for a Living. You may have noticed that I've been very absent for these past couple of weeks here on YouTube, and the reason is we have been working around the clock on a few projects, and the primary one that's been just sucking up all of my time has been bringing goats onto the site. We had not planned to bring goats onto the site just yet, but a number of things kind of aligned and some goats became available, and we decided to go ahead and just pull the trigger and get this dairy source. Gabby and I are dairy addicts. We are not ready to give up cheese. We're not ready to give up ice cream, sour cream, milk, butter. And we certainly don't have room for cattle on this lot. And we really wanted a self-sufficient source of dairy. And goats really make a lot of sense for this. And what we specifically chose was dwarf Nigerians because they're small, they're easy to handle, easy to fence. Goats love to escape, and so having shorter ones means that normal 4-foot fencing should be adequate to keep them in. So I just want to take a quick tour around what we've been building, what we've built so far, and what our plan is for managing these goats and grazing them on our land. I think some of this might be really useful to folks who live on a similar site to ours, which is more wooded, or in anywhere in the southeast that is more, even if it's not wooded, if it's land that's kind of meant to be wooded. Goats aren't big pasture animals. They don't love grass. They don't like bending down. In fact, that's when they get parasites and problems. What they like to do is browse at the level of their face. They don't want to bend down. I mean, not that they mind bending down, but that's where the food sources they like are, is at their mid-level, or they're standing up on their hind legs level, because what they want is this. They want perennials. They want forage. They like woody materials, which is awesome because it's a whole different kind of grazing that really fits middle Tennessee where we're at, because this is the crop we grow really well, trees. And there's so much opportunity where you can cut a tree off at its base or up in the air, and then it comes back the next year like this, all bushy and shrubby. And that's perfect forage for them. What we like to do is cut logs up like maybe 3 or 4 feet high. That'll pullard, and next year all these little branches will come growing off of it, which is perfect forage that will reoccur again and again for goats until that tree eventually dies. So goats just work really well for this environment, especially rotationally. But we're doing something very different, which is actually incorporating them into our timber operation. We have a lot of timbering to do on this property. We have a lot of trees that need to be removed for different reasons. In this case, we need to open up some light. And so I just logged off this entire area in the past few days, because uphill of it is our new garden site. This is where our annuals are going to be and where our greenhouse will be. So those trees had to go, and we need firewood and we need building materials. So we logged off some large oaks and a lot of medium-sized cedars. As you can see, we are not logging them off at ground level. In the case of these cedars, they're going to be actually acting as permanent fence posts for us. But the rest of the tree, these cedars make phenomenal building materials. They're very bug resistant and rot resistant. So we'll lop all these branches off them and use them to build pole structures, fencing, raised beds, all sorts of things like that. We're even starting to chainsaw mill some of that. And then other trees like the oaks, we're cutting off at that same level, so they'll do that pollarding effect. But as we go, we clear out a small patch, roughly the size of our electric netting that we have. We have some of the Premier One fencing, electric netting. And so we clear off an area that's roughly going to fit them. And we take all the, the good sized usable logs, those get dragged off to the side. But in the center of that, where we cleared off, all of the slash gets piled into the center. And then we fence that all off. And then those goats will be released into there. And ideally goats are escape artists, but they only want to escape if they're bored. And this will keep them from getting bored, is my theory, because goats love to climb, they love to search for food. I mean, that's all animals want to do, farm animals, is just look for food. So this presents a challenge. There's a lot of oak leaves and sumac and things they like buried deep down inside there. They're gonna have to really get their heads in there and move stuff around, and they'll climb all over this pile, and they'll have a lot of fun. And I think it'll keep them occupied for a few weeks, since we have just 3 of them. And so we'll do this throughout the property. We have many patches that need logged off like this. We have areas where we're going to build an Airbnb. We have an area we're working on subdividing an acre off. That needs cleared. We have permanent pasture areas we need to clear off. We have a deer plot we need to clear off. So there's probably enough logging operations like this to keep the goats grazing in this manner throughout the year. At which point, those first initial areas we run them through, by like next spring, they'll be growing back. Those trees will be all pollarded and we can run them through again. So this is kind of like normal rotational grazing, but instead of in a pasture environment, it's in a forest environment, and you might leave them a little bit longer in each site. And I really think this would be applicable to any kind of small to medium-sized logging operation where you live on the site and you can manage livestock. I think this is going to work really well. We'll follow the journey as we do so. But I'll talk about the actual goat housing for now. This is a temporary structure. I mean, it'll be here for a long time, but it's not it's not going to be our final goat housing. Right now, all of our goats are in it. We just bought 3. But long term, this will just be where the expectant mothers are and where their babies will be. So we'll build a small permanent paddock out here with regular fencing. That's what I'm working on today. But this will not be our final goat housing. But we're working on quite a tight budget and in a hurry. So we built this entirely with scrap materials except for one 2x4. I bought a single 2x4. But the rest of this was all scrap materials. It doesn't look like much, but it gets the job done. What we did was a pole type structure. We sunk these 4x4 poles in the ground. For the roof, we actually used a pallet. I'll see if you can see this. And then on the floor, we also used a pallet. You can see a piece of cedar we have here underlaying it, but this is all just a pallet. It's an 8-foot by 4-foot pallet, and that's just attached to those 4x4s. And then there's stone foundation underneath, just stones that were on the site. So a lot of this is just picked from the ground right here or cut from right here, or it was scrap materials. We have some underlayment, subfloor from our house build that we used there. This door is a pallet. This top opening door is just more pieces of wood. This was some cheap, crappy, rotting sheet metal that will do just fine for goats. So that's our setup. It's nothing fancy. There's a window in the back because we had to use up a window. But they have not complained about the housing yet. We left this part open. Oh, I want to show you this on the outside. For our siding, we use these kind of mill extras. They're just pieces of logs that aren't really good for much, but they're perfect for a project like this. Not only do they work as siding, but they're big enough to actually give some structural stability to this building. So here's our new employees. Say hi, everybody. And they're going to yield us a tremendous amount of dairy. We'll be able to make our yogurts, our cheeses, our butters, our ice cream. And as they have babies, when we have males, we'll probably eat some of those. So there'll be some meat, but the primary purpose of these goats is not for meat. It is for dairy. It's for that endless reoccurring source of protein and deliciousness. So that's our grazing program. I'll keep everybody updated as we make changes, as we see what does and does not work. But I'm feeling pretty optimistic about this system. And I think they're going to really fit well into this homestead. I think they're kind of a missing piece that we really needed. Last thing I'll talk about real quick before I go is what we're feeding them. Primarily, we will be feeding them that. They're just going to be grazing and free ranging. That's where their diet's going to be coming from. But we are supplementing for now, especially because right now, as I build this out, they're just locked up in there. So I'm having to feed them completely. So I'm bringing some of that browse to them. But we have our hay from a local organic grower. Very good stuff. And I love to use that hay because I buy as much as I can from her. And whenever the animals soil it or whatever they don't eat, just goes right onto the garden as mulch. And it's awesome mulch. And a little bit of alfalfa that we have around. We'll do a little bit of minerals, and then we'll do some grain. We're very lucky to live near MPS Farms, which puts out some very good non-GMO grains. So I just buy large quantities of that. I store it in these metal barrels. But that's not a feed supplement because much like humans, this is junk food and they love it. This is crack. This is goat crack. And that's because it's the same food that we like, which is carbs, sugar, and protein. And so that's just, pizza and hamburgers for them. They absolutely love it. And so I use that to get them to do what I want. Same as the chickens. They don't largely live off of the grain. The grain is to direct their labor to where I want. Just today, these goats escaped for the first time. I whipped out the grain and got them right back in without a struggle because they were so excited to have some of that nice goat crack. So that's our whole system, and like I said, I'll keep you posted as I figure out more. I'm new to raising goats, but I've worked with them before for other people, so they seem pretty simple animals and a really good fit for a small homestead, particularly a wooded one. All right, I'll keep everyone posted on our developments on that. In the meantime, y'all stay safe, be well, and happy homesteading.